I'll say that again. I'll record that for one of my sponsors. He's not here. My name's Frankie and I'm an addict. Hopefully they've got headphones on. I may stand up, sit down. Yeah, be strict with the times, James. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have experience on sponsorship. I have to be really, really careful because I tell a lot of lies. And I've got ex-sponsees in the room and they will remind me afterwards if I'm exaggerating and want me to confess. I came to NA in 92 and I went to the Angel Islington meeting. Got a lot of guitar at the moment. The first person I met, he's back up in Scotland now, Scottish John. They're all called John, aren't they? Scottish John. And he said, don't get a sponsor. They're predators. Or you only want a sponsor who takes you out for a meal. I was like, okay, it made sense. And I used to go to a meeting which isn't there anymore, called the Milton House meeting, which was full of Italians, because this place used to score around here and there was loads of Italians all over the place. They're not here now, I don't know where they're gone. And so for 10 years I basically came to NA. I got different sponsors. I thought a sponsor would help me. I went to West London and got myself a sponsor who took me through the steps. And that was a really good thing, but I wasn't really ready to a certain extent. I thought it was like an exam. I thought it was like ticking boxes and having a sponsor who's fairly famous and stuff like that. So that's me in the beginning coming through. And then when it got to 2003, after 8 treatment centres, a little stint back in prison and so on, I'd been around long enough and I saw this guy, Alan, who was only a couple of years older than me, but he had just become lead counsellor at a really prestigious treatment centre. And I was like, he's my sponsor, because my badge was that this guy ran a treatment centre. Yeah, fuck it, I must be well, yeah? So I thought, you know what else I'm going to make me well? Is I'm going to start working in the field of addiction. So I started doing volunteering and stuff. I'd already been doing volunteering for a little while and I thought, that will make me well as well. So this guy Alan, and this was my experience, I was, not until in desperation we seek help. He realised I was desperate, and what he did was he gave me things I'd never heard before. And one of the things he said was to phone him every day. Give me a time and to phone him every day. I know other people do it, but that's how I had to do it. The other thing was I had to meet up with him once a week with my step work. And I'd previously done step work, and I'd previously done step work from the mothership, as Dudley used to call it. But I'd done all that stuff, and I also had another badge of honour, because in that 10 years before I came and got this period of clean time I have now, there was a guy called Crowbar Johnny who was my sponsor. But I never did anything with him. He was another badge of honour, because you could say, because he was like a real kind of famous guy in NA at the time. And I had all this kind of history with me. Alan didn't care. Alan used to have a little tattoo on his hand of a saint. He didn't care. He was kingpin in Wales of selling sulphate. He didn't fucking care. He didn't. In fact, I don't think he actually liked other NA people. And he introduced me to the Step Working Guide. And he was the one who said to me that you have to write a little note of why you want to be sponsored. And the other thing was he said to me, the reason why we write this note of why you want me to sponsor you is because if you can't achieve this, you're not going to write a step 4. So it was all stuff that I was never heard. It was all alien to me. I thought control freak, he's a control freak, he's a nutter, And he took me through the step working guide within 6 months. Now I'd been around 10 years, but now I'm about 7-8 months clean. And when I finished, he said to me, right, we've done that. He said, now we're going to do one clean. We're going to go through the step working guide again, exactly the same way. So this isn't step share, but and my dedication was, I was so frightened, I didn't want to go back to using. I did exactly what he said, and I had this guy, he sponsored me for 2 years. And sometimes I look back and I think he was a bit rough with me, because I lived in Finsbury Park at the time in a hostel in Stroud Green Road, and I'd go to Victoria where he lived, and if I was 10 minutes late, he would go out. And I'd be like, fuck. All the way across London, and a silly little Nokia phone, and it didn't work on the train and all that kind of stuff. You know what the trains are like, Victoria line, can't make more noise than the Victoria line. And it got to 2 years, and I thought, I need to change. And I was sitting in a meeting, and this is where the disclaimer comes out. So please don't be offended around swearing anything. There are other people who don't swear, but I do. And I was sitting in a meeting with up at King's Cross, and there was a guy visiting from America. And when we're sitting in the meeting, and the meeting's like going on, one of the guys in the meeting said, we're all the same distance from using. And this guy who was in the meeting, he turned round, it was an English guy from America, and he said, so you're telling me, and this is right in the middle of the fucking meeting, all of a sudden there's cross-sharing going on. He's gone, so you're telling me, he said, that little arsehole over there who does fuck all stands as much chance of using as the geezer over there who phones his sponsor, writes his steps, goes to meetings, does service. And I was blown away by that. I was like, fuck, what bollocks has he got? What courage, So that's how I interpret it. I thought, I want this guy to be my sponsor. Well, I followed him around for about a year. And then, luckily, we got asked to go and share at, by this time, I'm just over 3 years, the European Convention was in Wales, and we were travelling up, and I got a lift with this guy. And I said to him, I'm really interested in your style of sponsorship, and I'm looking for a sponsor. And he's like, yeah, so, kind of thing. So I said to him, yeah, I think you might be able to help me, mate. And he said to me, okay, then tell me what powerless means. So I told him this big story about how I'm powerless. I'm powerless over people, places and things. I'm powerless over my girlfriend and the cheese in the fridge. I'm powerless over it. And he said to me, you're talking bollocks. And I was like, what? I went to him, it's all right then. So what's powerless mean? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. He'd done my brain in for 2 days. We was up in Snowdonia at the convention. I followed him round asking him what powerless was. It took me another 6 months to catch up with him, and then I asked him to be my sponsor, and he turned around really flippantly, and he knew I'd been trying to make a connection with this guy, and he turned around to me and he said, I will sponsor any sick addict. And I thought, that's really offensive. I feel offended. Really, really offended. And so I ended up being sponsored by this guy, and I've just been sponsored by him for about 15 odd years, and I've just split with him and I've moved on to someone else, because a sponsor's not a dog. It's not just for Christmas, you know what I mean? You can get rid of them, So it's like, but one of the things in between, I just want to borrow your book for a second, James. Is it the 5th edition? 6th edition. 6th edition. In the book here, there's a little story. Now, my sponsor at the time, Mickey, he was sponsored by a guy who's now dead, who has a story in this book which is called I Found the Only NA Meeting in the World, right? Now, that guy was my grand sponsor. And he's got a story in the book. Now, look, I'm feeding into my ego again, yeah? This has to be, my grand sponsor's in the fucking book. He created it. He's in the book. So, 5 years clean, right? I get to go to America. I'm with my wife's sponsor, and we're in a place called Long Beach. And my grand sponsor lives in fucking Long Beach. So I'm like, wow, I must go and see him. So I go to this speaker jam in Long Beach, and they have a dance there. And I had to go and do something. And then when I come back, my wife, Lindsay, was there. She said, you know what? Bob's here. He's over there. And he was on the dance floor. And I'm like, fuck, this is what I want. I don't want one of these people who's going to be sitting there with a book going and all that. So I went up and I spoke to Bob, and I went up to Bob and said, hey Bob, you know, Mickey's my sponsor, you're my grand sponsor, and I'm all overwhelmed. And he looked at me and he went, you must be one sick motherfucker. Shit. So now I use that on sponsees. You know, when I speak, if someone asks me to sponsor them, I basically say to them, thanks James, I basically say to them, well, you must be really sick to ask me, because I'm an obsessive extremist nutter, and I've learned how to live my life with a balance of the 12-step program. And I do quite well at it. The thing with sponsorship, it's a double-edged sword to a certain extent. I'm not even sure what that means. But it's what it is with sponsorship is I have got, besides the funny stories, I have got more out of working with other people than I have got working with people. With the sponsors that I've worked with, they've been really, really good. You know, that old poem that's, you know, I stand by the door, I show people what to do. I understand that stuff and I try and help people. But working with other people, it's allowed me to see my own humanity. It's allowed me to grow up. And what it is some of the things I haven't been able to share in sponsorship or even write down in step work, I've done step work with people in front of me who shared my experience to me as if they've been present, and I've gone, wow, I'm totally blown away by it. And I've sponsored so many different people in different walks of life, and I've sponsored some people who were poor, who are now very wealthy. I haven't become wealthy. I've sponsored some people who have had profound movements, you know, in the overall spirit, have become Christians, have overwhelming understanding of God. I don't. I've also sponsored people who have gone on to do some absolutely amazing things. I've sponsored people who have had children. I've sponsored people who have had cancer, who's had half their stomach hanging out and had to live with it. You know, I've sponsored people who's had mental illness. And through all of that experience, I've gained a life experience. You know, I have a few little stories which I don't have time to get into, but I have an example. One of the examples that I'll give is that I come from London. I sponsored someone from Liverpool, and it's like, for fuck's sake, you couldn't get anything worse for me. Yeah? And by the time of going through step work with that person, I started getting empathy. I started learning love. They showed me how to love. And all that has changed. You know, all that's changed. My whole life has moved on into the sense of, I now sponsor about 3 guys where I live locally in the West Country. They do fuck all. But what's happened is, I don't push them, I don't care. All the people in my earlier days who were eager and were desperate, Alan helped me with that, you know. My sponsors has helped me with that. And with these new guys, I'm a lot softer and a lot more gentle. I don't need to be like that. You either want it or you don't. And my experience is, you know, if you want a new way of life, don't just do the 12 steps and sit in meetings. Don't sell yourself short. Sponsor someone, because they make you open-mindedness, whether you want to be open-minded or not. You know, they open up your mind. You know, just to tag on the end of that, just because of the age we live in part of sponsoring, I've also sponsored women. Don't suggest it. I sponsored celebrities, they never get past step 4, you know, and I sponsored people from other cultures. That has totally enriched my life. You know, if I had the chance, I would sponsor people from all over the place and drop the English out, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah, first and foremost, I'm a human being. That's why I call myself Frankie. I'm an addict, secondly, because I've got the illness of addiction. And thanks, James. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move. Sorry, Lynette, we're going to have to move quickly. So we've looked at meetings, we've looked at getting clean. Now we're going to look at service, right? Service. Okay, this is all in the What Can I Do chapter. It says, we learn that service to others will get us out of ourselves. Our work can begin by simple actions, emptying ashtrays, making coffee, cleaning up, setting up for the meeting, opening the door, chairing a meeting, and passing out literature. Doing these things help us to feel part of the fellowship. Now, when I first got introduced to service from them boring people that were all doing that, right? They really pissed me off because they said that I needed to arrive early and make coffee. Right? Arrive early, make coffee, make tea. You know, they got me involved in public information. I didn't even understand what public information was. But they told me I need to give out these little pamphlets to doctors and different places. You know, and I didn't understand because I'm the one that's just finished using. I'm the one who needs the help. Why are they getting me to do all of this stuff? Right? But when I turned up at my home group and everyone was in conversation about what they've been doing that week, I was proud to say I've been doing service of public information. I didn't even know what public information meant. Do you know what I mean? But it made me feel a part of something. I also suffer from, in the same chapter, it talks about self-obsession is the core of my disease. It's the absolute core. And I remember understanding that to the core of my disease, it's all about Aaron. What do you think about me? What's Aaron going to get? How much? What if Aaron doesn't get? You know, what does Aaron look like? What do they think of me? It's just me. It's the core of my disease.
We love you.
Right? Thank you, Junior. Right? So service, what it does, it gets me away from that core. Right? When I realized the concept of reaching out and helping and doing things for other people actually helps my disease, I started to get relief. Yeah. I even went to a place outside of the rooms that helped homeless people because I didn't know what to do in between the meetings. There was a place called there's a place in Western Supermare where you just go and help the homeless. So in between meetings, I was helping the homeless. Not because I'm a great guy and I really want to help the homeless at that time. It wasn't because of that. It was because I realized that it got me out of the self-obsession. It got me out of that. So we learn to do service in the fellowship, and it mentions certain things. So I just want to throw it out there. What's your experience been like by learning the principle of being of service? What has it been like? Thank you. Over there.
Well, I do service for me.
Yeah.
And that's, because it makes me feel, as you said, it's got various advantages for me. And it's not so much, I don't, to be honest, I don't do it because it's a good thing to do. I do it because I want to stay clean. And, I'm very ruthless about staying clean, and that's really my motivation for it. And that sounds, sounds a bit selfish, but I don't honestly care. because it's, I've been clean for a long time. It's partly thanks to doing it, and I don't really want to go to meetings, not really. I'd much rather sit and watch TV, and if I have a commitment to the meeting, then I will go.
Yeah.
And I feel like a fucking child with a credit card, to be honest. And I've been clean 29 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just, it's really important. And the other thing is, if you do service for yourself, then you don't start getting shitty with people who don't do it. If people don't do it, they don't get the benefits from it. And that's very much their problem. It's not my problem. And I don't have to worry about that or get resentful towards other people who don't do it. If I do it for me, then that's fine. Yeah,
thank you. Anybody else on this side? I think there's someone right at the very back.
Yeah, hi, George.
All right, George.
My experience, so I've got a team commitment at the moment, and I also do, I'm co-secretary on a non-week, and I know when I first came into these rooms, I couldn't open my mouth, I've been isolated for so long. I had no communication skills, and now from making the teams, and even if there's a clash of personalities with someone in that room, it makes me have to accept it, and I've still got to give back. And also, and the co-secretary, it's really good for my confidence and my social skills. And even if I fuck up or I do something wrong, it's still really good for me to grow and learn from it. And just get chucked in the deep end. I'm really loving it. So
thank you.
It's good to give back and it's good for me. It's a win-win.
Thank you. I just want to quickly say something before we move on quickly, We ain't got much long to go, probably 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll shut it down. But I remember calling my sponsor once. I was on the beach, and I'd been struggling previously. And I was on the beach, and I called him, and he said, "How are you getting along?" And then he said, I said, "I'm getting along fantastic. I feel like I'm spiritually centered. I feel like I'm grounded. I feel the power of I feel my higher power. I feel God. I feel." And he said, "Is anyone around you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, that's probably why." Right? When it's true, I can be as spiritual as you like when there's no one there. When I'm in contact with others is when you see the strength of my program. When I'm challenged with people who've got different opinions, to me, that's when you see the strength of my program. Do you get what I mean? Different personalities. We practice the principles in all of our affairs. But if I'm sitting down there and I ain't got no affairs, I'm just looking at the sea and no one's around me, of course I'm going to be on top of the world. Do you know what I mean? So we learn, we learn so much. Doing service is multi-layered. I don't think there's one thing we can say we do service for. It's multi-layered, while we do service. Okay, so sponsorship. We have found it helpful to have a sponsor and to use this sponsor. Sponsorship is a two-way street. It helps the newcomer and the sponsor. Right? So has anyone got experience with sponsorship and that two-way street? We've got any sponsors in the room? Anyone?
Him again. Me again. Again, it's really important that I sponsor people to remind me of who I am. Because I will forget who I am, because this disease will make me think that I'm some other person that's almost like me but not quite like me. Who can use? That's where I go, and this is an incurable illness. So I really need to do that. And I don't consider it to be really a favour to anybody, but I have to be asked to do it. I don't go around offering to do it because I'm not crazy. But it's a fantastic thing to do. I don't necessarily need each individual, but I need those relationships. I think it helps me to stay in recovery, and I need to stay here because if I leave NA gets along fine, and I'll fucking use sooner or later. That's the truth of it. That's the relationship as I see it. So I need to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else experienced with sponsorship? Gavin? All right, Gavin.
I've got a sponsor that I've got claim. I've been sponsored this since. I think it's about accountability. I need to be accountable to someone. It's a two-way thing. But if I'm accountable to someone, I'll get my ideas. I don't care how clean you are. I have to run through any major decision in my life with a sponsor or with another addict. Because I've got a disease that serves me life. And I get bright ideas, especially when I clean up, I have a bright idea every day. And I have a sponsor who said to me, if you get any bright ideas, phone me up. I just phoned him up with my idea, and he was an old man Scotsman, and he used to swear at me, call me an idiot, put phone down. And then next day I said, I'm thinking of doing this, and he say, you are there, I don't swear, but he used to swear at me, put the phone down. And it stopped me from acting out in silly ways. And then one day I said to him, Rob, I'm thinking of doing this. He went, great idea. And he put the phone down. So I don't always get bad ideas, but I need a sponsor to check out when I get when I do get a bad idea. And it's about accountability. I'm honest with my sponsor, and I have to be, because I start believing my life. You know, we are each other's eyes and ears, as this is says, and I need other people to tell me that my thinking is wrong. You know, and when I'll say this quickly, when Adam got clean on his first day, you don't remember this. I went up to him and I said to him, our sponsor, and he went, turn it in, mate, and he ran off. And then 9 years later, I wanted to go through the step working guide, and then Aaron ended up being my sponsor. and I think, you know, that's how things turn around. I didn't use, but yeah, the person I asked to sponsor who went away ended up being my sponsor. But without a sponsor, I've sponsored this, and I believe my own thinking. I act out, I do silly things, and it's a two-way thing. You know, you can challenge your own sponsor.
Yes.
And say, look, what are you doing here?
Yes.
I had a sponsor once who was like 38 something years ago and said to me, if you ever see me do anything stupid, point it out to me, don't let me die on the defence.
Yes.
And so it's a two-way thing.
Yes, absolutely. So just to touch quickly on the two-way street thing, me and my sponsor have fallen out numerous of times. My sponsor's main thing, our relation is based on him taking me through the 12 steps. And we go through the 12 steps together. But we don't always see eye to eye on everything. And it's actually healthy that I get to a point where I've got a voice and I may see things differently to him. That's okay. I still respect him and I still understand the line. He's my sponsor. Do you understand? Junior, just quickly before we move on.
So we only give what we've got by giving it away.
Yes.
And I think this is fundamental in what sponsorship's really about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if I don't have sponsees to keep my experience too, I'm 55, I'll forget. I'll forget your name. You're saying, tell me your name 3 minutes ago, I'll see you down the road and I'll call you sir. Because my mind's futile. Is it? Something like that. But for me, sponsorship, you know, my sponsees tell me they benefit from our interaction and, you know, Junior, you're this, no, stop. It's not me, it's God. Just keep that straight. Any change that you make in your life is your actions, not mine. I'm just here. You know. And what they don't know is, especially when we've got sponsees that are still going through the manifestations, they're reminding me of the pain that I experienced when I was in their shoes doing what they're doing. So the identification and the reminder that I get from my sponsees tells me that I'm still doing the right thing. You know, so it's no matter where I go with it, it's either a figure of 8 infinity or it's a circle of information that reminds me that I'm still in the right place and the fortress of Narcotics Anonymous is a safe place. And the most important thing, Gavin touched on it, but it's also my first experience of someone really having their investment in my confidentiality. Because I was talking about stuff that would either give me a life sentence. There was some stuff that I'd never told anybody, and it was really difficult for me to find myself trusting another human being to do that. And in truth, the disease beat me into a place of submission anyway, and then I was like, you know what, you'll do. She'll do, because I wasn't gear and I've got to get rid of it. And my experience is I've never had my confidence breached in Narcotics Anonymous, and I do not breach my sponsee's confidentiality.
Good. All right, thank you, Junior. Yeah, so, you know, sponsorship, two-way street. It's the heartbeat of our program. You know, sponsorship is highly important. So we're gonna close. But before we close, there's a couple of things that I wanna touch on. Right, is that the basic text. The basic text is written by our fellowship. This is hundreds, thousands of people's experience. Right? The most effective way for this text for me to come alive is when I sit with another person and read it. When we break it down together and we share experience together, my experience is this starts to come alive. This is not a reading book or a story. It's a basic text. So a textbook is something which we study. That's what it is. This book also is not for everybody. It's not. I just want to touch quickly here what it says here around our book, right? In our symbol, it says, the simplicity is the key to our symbol. It imitates the simplicity of our fellowship. All sorts of occult and esoteric connotations can be found in the simple outlines. Now, the word esoteric, looked it up in the dictionary. Was it, Mikey? Okay, Esther. It is intended for or only likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest. So in short, that means that people like us will really only understand this. Right? Now, I had a friend, you know Terry. You had a friend, Terry C, his name is. Right? And when we was in treatment, he really wanted a girlfriend, yeah? Really wanted a girlfriend. That was his whole mission, to find a girl. So he managed to get this girl. He was really buzzing about this relationship. He said, this is, I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what they say about 1 year you need. I don't care what anyone says, right? I found this girl. It's going to be me and her, right? Really buzzing. He comes back in the meeting the next day and he looks tearful. I said to him, Terry, what's the matter, bruv? He said, I gave her this book to read. She read Who is an Addict, and now she won't talk to me. You know what I mean? Because the book is not made for everybody. It's made for us. That's what it's made for us. You know what I mean? So, I'm going to close. But, the What Can I Do chapter, if you've got a sponsee, or even if you've been around for a while and you just want to rejig your program, has got everything that we need. Meetings, sponsorship, steps, service, giving it away. It's got everything which we need, in order to get this thing which we call recovery. So thanks. I'm going to leave it there.